With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here in the Bourbon Life Studios, it is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how are you doing out there in the Bourbon Life green room?
Hey, Mark, I am good out here in front of the Bourbon Life fireplace. How are you doing? How are you doing in the other room there?
I'm good, man. Mission control. We've got it going on here tonight, man. We got it under control. Things are going well. No technology issues. At least we're going to claim that, and we're going to keep it moving forward.
Absolutely. Before
we jump into the show, Matt, I need to thank all of our sponsors. And if anybody happens to look at me and thinks I look stoned, I promise I'm not stoned. My allergies are killing me. So the glazed red eyes, I promise, are all natural. It is not from anything improper at this point, okay? So I want to get that out of the way first. So before we jump into the show, let's thank the sponsors. Thank them for everything they do. We appreciate you guys doing everything for us and keeping us going here, because we could not do this show without your support and your help. So we appreciate everything that you all do for us. Matt, with that said, let's jump right in and tell everybody who we have with us tonight.
I would love to. And it is October now. We have October 2023.
That's right.
We've made it through September, Bourbon Heritage Month. What a month it was. And we are excited to kick off October here. And we have a full house tonight on the Bourbon Life Podcast, or this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever it is you get your Bourbon Life Podcast. And we have joining us, Mark and I, the Senior Manager of Innovation and Blending, and also the Senior Director and Head of Innovation, Blending, and Quality at Maker's Mark, Beth Buckner and Dr. Blake Layfield, respectively. Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast. We're so glad to have you on.
Thanks for having us. We're happy to be here.
Thank you for having us. Thrilled to be
we,
on our
we appreciate you guys joining us tonight. That's right. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to know that this is your first podcast. So I promise we'll take it easy on you guys. We won't ask too many difficult questions. We'll keep it fairly straightforward and pretty easy. But I am excited to have you guys on. I just got to meet you both for the first time not too long ago at the distillery. You had the beautiful celebration of the new product that we're going to be talking about in the third round. So I was very fortunate to be invited to join a small group of people to come down and check that out. It was a great experience. It was a wonderful opportunity, and it was really cool to get to meet you both in person. So after that, I was like, Bob, I've got to have them on the show. We've got to make that happen. So kudos to Bob at Doe Anderson for taking care of that and making that happen. He's a great guy. I love working with him, and excited to have you guys on the show with us. So I think we just jump right in here. Probably be the easiest thing to do. So what we're going to be doing, the first round, we've got poured up the Maker's Mark, what we call Maker's Mark Classic. So if one of you all would like to maybe just take some time and discuss that a little bit, just talk about what the Maker's Mark Classic is, and just tell our listener, I mean, everybody's familiar with Maker's Mark, but we'll still do that, right?
Yeah, sure. I'll take this one, Beth. So I'll take Maker's Mark Classic. I know that everyone's pretty familiar with this brand, but what I want to talk about on Maker's Mark Classic, this was founded in 1953 by Bill and Margie Samuels with the vision to create a flavorful wheated bourbon that's easily enjoyed, balanced, complex, and without bitterness. And that product is Maker's Mark Classic, coming in at 45% alcohol by volume or 90 proof. I really love this product because it looks beautiful in your home bar. I like the red wax. It's both equally beautiful, but it's also versatile. It's something that I enjoy neat as a mixer or in a cocktail. It simply tastes great. So what I kind of get on the aroma, you get a nice balance of subtle oak, some vanilla, and some fruit. And that really corresponds to the flavor as well and goes into the flavor. So again, you get that balance of oak and caramel and vanilla, some fruit, and I like to think of it as baking spice. I don't know, Beth, if you would call it anything differently.
Agree completely.
No, wait, are you just saying that?
Got, like, if you compare it to the category, it's got kind of a creamy mouthfeel that you commonly find with the wheated bourbon versus our rye-based bourbon. And it has a nice, clean finish that's pretty soft with a little spice and wood sugar. And that's why I find it just great for really whatever occasion you're going for.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the nose on this one?
Oh, this is great. I don't have to lead off for once. Blake took care of it for me here.
Matt first. I mean, man, they've knocked it out.
That's
already,
right.
there.
That's right. There's not too much I can really add to that. I get a really nice fresh baked bread aroma, kind of like this crisp honey wheat aroma comes through on the nose to me. And then everything that Blake was talking about as well. And I pick up the fruit for me is I'm picking up a little bit more apple. Maybe I'm just in that mindset here as we're settling into autumn in Kentucky. But it's got kind of a red, delicious apple, like a crisp red apple or some sort of like a red orchard or tree fruit aroma on it. Just really nice. A really, really great wheated bourbon's nose. Kind of hits on all points. Just really delightful.
Yeah, the funny thing, Matt, is for me, a lot of times when I nose makers, and this is one of the bourbons that were on my list when I did the Master of Bourbon certification program. So this is one that I got really familiar with. And it seemed like almost every time I nosed it that I would get strawberries on Maker's Mark. That just seemed to be a common note to me, or at least, the fruit came through to me as strawberries. Tonight, for some reason, believe it or not, maybe it's your power of suggestion, Matt, but I was sitting here thinking I'm getting like red, like crisp apple more so than strawberry on this one. So it's kind of odd that it's changed a little bit on me, but that could be your power of suggestion. So what do you think, Blake, Beth? We do all right?
You do great. I definitely get the crisp apple note to me. I get it. Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, I think each person has their own filter by which they describe things with. And I think we do get a fruit note, and we leave it a bit ambiguous on what that fruit note is, because that's going to really depend on your personal background and your personal palate. But fruity, yes.
Yeah. That makes sense. So guys, let's talk about you all a little bit, or a lot of bit, if you'd like. Just share with our listeners, if you would, a little bit about who you are, how you got into the whiskey industry, and then how it is that you managed to end up at Maker's Mark where you are. So whoever wants to go first, I'll just throw it out there and let you guys choose on that.
Blake, I'll start because I have the easy route. You have the more complicated one. So I actually started in the industry 10 years ago at Makers. So
Awesome.
My one and only industry job is here at Maker's Mark, which has been great. So I have a very biased opinion on all things red wax. I'll just say it now. But I started in our quality department, focused mostly on the distillery and the warehouse through maturation, which kind of naturally led into the innovation stream of work that, until we created the department in 2019, happened through the quality lab, just naturally, because it was the only place we could actually do the experiments. So
now, were you over in that little building there on campus, that little teeny tiny?
Yes.
Was that where you were?
Yeah.
Were you?
So
Okay.
the building you visited us in was actually the old quality lab that we took to the new innovation lab. But the old innovation was that tiny little toll gate that you could barely turn around in.
Right.
So when we created the department, that's where we moved. And so we had enough room for like 300 bottles and 2 tables and 4 chairs and enough space to turn in a circle. And that was about it.
Oh my gosh. Well, your new space is gorgeous. That was beautiful when we got to come over and visit. That was really, really nice. So congratulations on that upgrade.
Thanks. We're really happy with it.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, how about you, Blake?
Well, my journey is a bit different than Beth's. I'm from North Carolina. I'm not a native Kentuckian. I went to NC State University. You can see some of the wolves behind me. That is the school mascot. Um, Coming from North Carolina, it's a very common mascot, but I find in Kentucky, people always ask me, what is that behind you? And I have to explain that to them. But that's where I did my bachelor's, master's, and PhD in food science with a specialty in bioprocess engineering, which is a really fancy way of saying brewing. So I got into brewing. That was what I did my graduate degrees in, and then I moved to Chicago, and I worked for a company called Diageo. They make a lot of other products in the category, and I was traveling a lot for my role. And I've got 2 little kids, and when our second kid came, my wife made a family decision for us and said, we're going to get closer back to North Carolina. And she drew a circle on a map, and half of that circle was in the water, and half of it I could work with. And part of that line happened to be in Louisville. So I came here to Louisville, and I led part of our global research and development team, led a couple of teams within that structure, and then I led our global liquid quality team. And at about that time, Maker's Mark had some organizational changes that occurred, and that brought me into Maker's Mark to lead innovation, blending, quality, and Star Hill Farms team. So really what I see my role is here at Maker's Mark is to protect and enhance the portfolio while also creating new innovations, research, and experiences at Maker's Mark.
Very cool. Very, very nice. Well, we won't hold it against you that you're not a native Kentuckian, but, so now that you're here.
I've been here for about 5 years, so I'm hoping that I get some type of credibility for that.
Very little. Very little.
Huh.
Oh, yeah. So now, Beth, are you native? You're native, right?
I am.
I thought we had that discussion at lunch when I was there. I was pretty sure that you had said that you were. So, okay. Well, that's awesome. And you're actually in your facility there, correct?
I am. I just stayed in the innovation lab today.
Okay. That's what I thought. After we were talking about it, I'm like, oh, yeah, she's got all the bottles back there.
If only these were the shelves in my house.
That's what I was going to say. As impressive as Mark's mantle is behind me, I have been definitely outgunned by you there.
Definitely work.
Oh, no doubt. So let's kind of talk about the roles, if you would. I'm curious, and I think our listeners would love to know, Beth, with you starting out, Senior Manager Innovation, can you kind of talk a little bit? I always say, is there a standard day? Probably not a standard or typical day, but can you really talk about the role itself and what that entails and what that means to have that position for Maker's Mark?
Absolutely. So a lot of my position is, really protecting the guardrails of the brand that we've established for innovation. So everything that we do always halos back to Classic Mark, has to meet the brand ethos. And so that's most of my job, is ensuring everything that we do stays true to who we are. But a day in the life can be different every single day. So anything from Cellar Aged that we're going to talk about later, in the ideation and all of the work behind that with bottle development and, project planning, from when to lay down barrels, when to dump barrels, how does it get bottled, when, and all of those things we're involved in. And then a lot of it is, planning with Blake for the next 30 years of innovations for the future. And then we do a lot of just work on Classic Maker's Mark, understanding where flavor comes from beginning to end. So from grain to glass and all of the inputs throughout the processes, whether it's through maturation or in the distillery, and how every single piece can impact flavor. So we do a whole lot of work just with flavor in general. So whether it's new innovations or Classic Maker's Mark, just understanding our product inside and out.
Very, very cool. Blake, how about you? Can you tell us a bit about what your role entails? Because you kind of you talked a little bit, you said you do farm stuff as well as the quality and blending and innovation as well. So if you can kind of share what it is that you do, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, sure. So I'm responsible for management of the holistic team as a whole, and it's really fantastic to have really strong leaders within this team, Beth being one of those. on Star Hill Farms. That's led by Brian Mattingly. And Star Hill Farms is the 1,100 plus acre farm that the distillery and the consumer experience sits on. And that focus is really around grain research for flavor, really understanding bourbon as an agricultural product and what wheat, corn, barley, our soil, and the varieties of those grains can deliver for flavor, as well as some of that agriculture and sustainability research around produce and animal management. So we've got an oak repository, an orchard, mushroom gardens, an aviary, animals. It's a really holistic farm experience when you come on the distillery, not just a distillery. So there's that segment of the team led by Brian Mattingly. Beth just covered innovation really strongly there, but think about innovation not only as the bright, shiny new products, but also renovations. If we're doing a label change or a bottle change or a dip for an NFL team or something like that. So it's a strong maintenance of our existing portfolio and also creating that future, as well as quality. And quality is really focused on analytical testing and methodology development. So think about all the super geeky chemistry stuff that lives in your nightmares from your college. That is also part of our team. It's really ensuring we've got a really high level of technical rigor to ensure we deliver really high quality, consistent products to our consumers that meet all those regulatory compliance laws.
And that's why you're a doctor.
Yeah. Bill says that I'm he calls me the resident smart guy. And depending on the audience, I say the PhD stands for post hole digger or potentially heavy drinker. It really depends on who I'm talking to.
There you go. I like that. That's a great moniker for the PhD on both of those. That's great. Well, Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey. Let's talk about the Maker's Mark, the classic edition whiskey with no E. Mind you, for those listening at home or watching on YouTube, there was no E in the whiskey, which we've talked about before on previous episodes. So I think that's kind of very unique about Maker's Mark, obviously. But Matt, let's talk about it. Talk about the palate and the finish. What do you pick up on this?
Sure deal. Well, first, before we go there, Beth, I thought that was really interesting and unique that you talk so much about working with just classic makers and trying to still understand it and trying to figure all of the nuances out about the staple product that you all have been putting out for so long. It seems, and it's cool to hear. I would expect, and I'm sure it is, part of the innovation role is, of course, looking forward, but it's great to hear that you're so focused and so concerned and interested in what's happening with the classic brands and the staple products that you all are putting out and not just what's moving forward. I wouldn't have expected that to be one of the first things out of your mouth. That's really cool and really reassuring to hear from your role.
Awesome. Well, when you think about it, we make one product. So we've got to make sure it's consistent every single time. So understanding all of those inputs and influences really helps us hit that target every single time on classic.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. I forgot to ask because you're not going to confirm the mash bill, but we know that this is a wheated mash bill. We'll just leave it at that, correct? Red winter wheat.
Yes.
Just so I think everybody at home knows that Maker's Mark obviously is a wheated mash bill. So, but I always have to ask, if anybody will confirm the mash bill, because it's on the internet, we think, but we don't know. Nobody's confirmed it.
We
right?
can. So, we talk about it on tours. We tell every single person that comes to the distillery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know. I was thinking that was something that wasn't shared, because it's 70-16 wheat, 14 malted barley, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. There you go. Mystery solved. Yay.
We don't have secrets around here.
Oh,
maybe a couple, but not
that's
many.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we don't mind sharing that. We talk about it a lot on the tour because you can take our mash bill and go try to make it somewhere else. It will not taste like Maker's Mark Classic. Distillation is all about choices. Mash bills are certainly one of those. Most of the category is rye based. There are a small segment that are wheat based, and I think wheat for us gives a soft, sweeter flavor. And we think of those baking spices that we called out earlier, that cinnamon, that nutmeg, that caramel, the butterscotch really gets accentuated by that choice. They also tend to be a little fruitier and creamier in mouthfeel. And as you think about what the founders wanted, something that was easy to enjoy, balanced, complex, and without bitterness, you can see why they kind of gravitated towards wheat, which at the time was incredibly unique and still is quite a small segment of the category as a whole.
Yeah, very, very good point. So Matt, kind of following up on that, I'll throw it back to you again on the palate and finish. What do you pick up on those?
Sure. The palate, to me, the sweetness of the wheat really comes through right at the front, and get a nice note of caramel, the sweet vanillas, and then a nice oaky wood type of flavor as well. To me tonight, I'm picking up sort of like a sweet tea, or like some sort of like a sweeter tea type beverage coming through. Just this really nice kind of sweet flavor on it, and a good long creamy finish. Really delightful tonight.
Yeah, I get the classic. I mean, Maker's Mark. When I think Kentucky bourbon, I think Maker's Mark. I mean, it's just one of those classics. 70 years around. It's been here forever. It seems like one of those things I drank in college at UK. I mean, no question about it. It was, when you could afford it, because back as a poor college student, that was a pricier bottle, but it was always a thrill to be able to buy Maker's Mark. Of course, we mixed it with Coke at the football games or whatever, right? So, but it's a quintessential, to me, bourbon, like you said, Matt, those classic bourbon flavors and aromas. The thing that always stands out to me on the finish and the palate on this one, mostly the finish, is there is I get a spiciness off of this, which I think when you say wheated mash bill, you don't necessarily expect to pick up like that much, like almost, it's like cinnamon to me, like a sweet cinnamon flavor on the palate, the finish. And I think a lot of people don't expect that. And to me, it still surprises me sometimes to go back and visit classic Maker's neat. And that finish on there that really stands out with a nice little spicy cinnamon kick to it. So Beth, Blake, I'll throw it to you guys. What else is out there on that palate and finish that we missed?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, because I think you described it really well, is I hear people describe bourbon as spicy a lot. And I think within the category context, that when you have a wheated bourbon, that tends to be that sweeter cinnamon, nutmeg, baking spice type, whereas rye-based bourbons tend to be a bit more aggressive on their spice. That tends to be more of a pepper, like a black pepper clove type. So it is a distinguished type of spice that I think is important to keep in mind, because it then marries up with how do you enjoy it and what stands up in a cocktail and how you tend to use this product.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Beth, how about you?
Yeah, I think my favorite, you've hit all the notes. My favorite thing on Classic for me is how balanced it is. So you get the vanilla and the caramel, but you get those baking spices, but it's all really balanced. One thing isn't dominating anything else. And then it does have that like really clean but smooth, creamy finish that I like every day. Classic is not always my go-to because we drink Cask Strength whiskeys every day and all the stuff that we do. But it's been actually my first drink today, so I'm thoroughly enjoying this one. No tasting.
Well, I'm glad that we could not only be your first podcast, but also your first drink of the day, Beth. So that's right. Exactly. That's awesome. Well, I tell you what, we are at the end of round one here. So I think this might be a good place. Just take a quick break. We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll come back with more with Blake Layfield and Beth Buckner from Maker's Mark in just a minute. From our good friends at the Stave comes Lexington's newest hot spot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes, and it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, The Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here still in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there?
Hey, Mark, I am doing great, and I am still in the Bourbon Life Studios, also known as your basement.
My basement,
Yeah,
that's right.
Control to Major Tom. You doing all right in there?
Yeah, doing great, man. We're having a great time. This is a fun show. I've been looking forward to this one ever since I went down to Maker's Mark a month or so ago. Really wanted to do this show. I'm excited that we were able to get it together. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope our listeners are enjoying it as much as I am, because I love Maker's Mark products. So it's just a lot of fun to drink through it with the people that are responsible for us being able to enjoy them. So with that said, though, Matt, well, I do need to thank all of our sponsors. I got to get better about that. Thank you, sponsors. We appreciate you guys, everything you do for us. So with that said, Matt, you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. I think by now it is no secret that we are drinking Maker's Mark, and we are so lucky to have Beth Buckner, the Senior Manager of Innovation and Blending, and Dr. Blake Layfield, the Senior Director and Head of Innovation, Blending, and Quality at Maker's Mark, joining us. All welcome back for the second round.
Thanks. We're happy to be here still.
The pleasure really is all
Round
ours.
2.
That's right.
Round 2. That's right. Guys, I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm envisioning how, when I promote this on Friday, because the show will come out this Friday, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to promote this with the titles. So that's going to be a lot. So I'm going to have to figure something out there, man. We'll have to work that one out.
If you can shorten Blake's title, he'll be more than happy for you to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Resident Smart
It's kind of like the naming convention for. Oh, there you go, Resident Smart Guy. It's like the naming convention for the wood finishing series with all the SE 4692 X36. Yeah. So kind of along those same. I'm just kidding, Beth.
We're fully aware we're terrible at naming things. We've said it from the beginning. Margie figured it out. We've been terrible since.
That's all right. You put out great products. You know what? When you put out great products, it doesn't matter what you call them, right?
Exactly.
People just, they're happy with what they get to drink. And when it's good, it doesn't really matter. But speaking of drinking, this round, we've moved on to the Maker's Mark Cask Strength. So would one of you like to tell our listeners a little bit about the Maker's Mark Cask Strength?
Sure. Blake, I'll take this one since you did the last one, if that works. But when we think about cask strength, something that Rob Samuels always said was, cask strength is really the true identity of who a distiller is or who a brand is, because you can't hide anything with cask strength. And so we actually released this in the market in 2013 and have slowly expanded since. Started just in Kentucky. But it's my favorite thing because it really highlights how proof is a lever on flavor, because you get the same notes just amplified differently at cask strength. And I don't want to hinder anybody's tasting notes this round, so I'm not going to go through all of them initially. We can go through them as we go. But our cask strength, because we go into the barrel at 110 proof, and because we do rotate our barrels for consistency, our cask strength is typically between 107 and 114 proof.
Okay. Yeah, I think, Matt, this bottle, because I went out and bought a bottle today, because for some reason I didn't have any Maker's Mark Cask Strength. I must have drank it all, surprisingly. But I picked up a bottle today. I think it's 109.4 proof, but then the bottle that Matt had is 110.4. So yeah, so there's going to be that little bit of fluctuation there. But I thank you. Thanks for telling us about the 110. I'd forgotten about that. But Makers, you guys do go into the barrel. The legal minimum or maximum is 125, but you all choose 110. Of course, that has an impact on your bottom line, right? Can you talk a little bit about that, how that affects what you know?
Yeah. Believe me, finance would love if we went in at a different proof.
Yeah.
So because we go into the barrel at 110, we actually need more barrels and more warehouse spaces. So obviously it's a little more costly on the front end, but we actually did an 8-year DNA project experiment where we looked at different entry proofs for Maker's Mark, where we did 110, 115, 120, and 125. And it's not Maker's Mark unless it goes into the barrel at 110. So while it costs a little bit more, it makes the whiskey that we all know and love. So we're not going to change it.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is the same mash bill. I mean, everything we're drinking, it is the same. It is.
I was just going to say just a fun history lesson. It was in 1962 that distillers were permitted to first raise the barrel entry proof to 125. Prior to that, it was at 110. Oh. So this does make more bourbon, but it doesn't make Maker's Mark bourbon. And that lower barrel entry proof, we believe, gives bigger flavor. So that's why we're still focused. That's why we still keep doing that, even though it's more costly.
It's in the guardrails, what Beth kind of alluded to. We'll probably talk about that a little bit more as well. But the Maker's guardrails, right? So that makes sense. Matt, what do you pick up on the nose on this one?
The nose for me on this has got, just like Beth was saying, a lot of the same characteristics we had in the first round with the Maker's Mark Classic, but just amplified. I pick up a little more cherry on this. I think the fruits, the berries, those sweet notes are definitely amplified. I think I also pick up like a sweeter pipe tobacco is coming across. Okay. Those baking notes, some of the light baking spices, that fresh wheat bread, the honey are definitely there. And then I pick up a little bit more of the toasted oak, or that like sweet oaky flavor on the back end of the nose too.
Gotcha. The strawberries, to me, this is coming across really with the strawberry. You said cherry, Matt. To me, I just get that really strong strawberry aroma, but I almost get like a kind of like a burnt sugar, beyond caramel, but it's almost like almost like a brulee type of sugar aroma on this one. And I know this doesn't have any like finishing staves or anything like the 46 or anything like that. This is Maker's straight out of the barrel at cask strength, but I'm still picking up a little bit almost like a brulee sugar or burnt sugar kind of an aroma. So Beth, Blake, we'll throw it over to you guys. What do you think?
I think you nailed it. My tasting notes kind of stay the same on cask. You get a lot of that like oak note because of the higher proof. I get a ton of vanilla and caramel, and then I do get more of the darker stone fruits than I do the bright fruit at cask strength.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I was just going to comment is just given the proof point of it, it drinks really smoothly. And what I find is quite nice is the harmony that we talked about in Classic is still intact with cask strength, that you're still getting a nice balance between oak and fruit and vanilla, caramel, and those spice notes are all there, but they're all in relative proportion to each other. So again, it drinks really, really well, even at a really high proof point.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And this is, well, we'll jump on the palate and finish here in just a few minutes. But Blake, you kind of mentioned earlier in the first round a little bit about some changes that have been going on. Yeah, and I think everybody that knows about Makers knows there have been some changes there. You had two people, Denny and Jane, that had both that left the distillery. So can you guys just talk real quick, about what moving forward, how things are going, and what that means for you guys? Specifically in your roles and how that has impacted what you guys do and just that'd be good.
Yeah, sure. Denny and Jane were really left a fantastic mark on the brand, but we are part of a team, and our team is still headed up by our captain, which is Rob Samuels. Rob Samuels is the 8th generation whiskey maker and the son of Bill Samuels Jr. and the grandson of Bill and Margie. And he really helps us keep our brand focused, really focused on ensuring that we are always making our mark to make better bourbon, to make something that lives up to the original founder's intent and always keeps the ethos of ensuring that bourbon is an agricultural product, that our flavor is derived from nature, and we try to keep the brand pretty focused on that. So when we talk about enhancing and innovating, we're always trying to do it as naturally as we can possibly do it, and we are really focused on some specific areas around that. And that's where you see some of the B Corp work, some of the regenerative agriculture, some of the oak work, as well as us staying pretty clear on we don't have any RTDs. We're not making a rye. We're not doing finishes in barrels that are from rum or tequila or cognac or any of those other regions. We want to keep it really close to what is our focus, and keeping the brand focused actually is an innovation in and of itself.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Beth, anything you want to add to that? Or
No, I think Blake covered a lot of it. I would say, you know, Jane and Denny had a huge impact, and, you know, we appreciate everything that they did, and we wish them the best of luck on their next endeavors. But our day-to-day, while it changed a little bit, the direction and the goal of the brand doesn't stray. So the work continues on.
Great. Sure. Yeah. So Blake, you know, I like the fact you kind of talked about the sustainability issue and, you know, things that Makers is doing. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know we talked about that before, previous episode, just a touch. You know, we had Jane and Amanda, and I will just tell you guys, Amanda is probably one of my all-time favorite people. I absolutely adore her and just love everything that she does. She's always so kind to me. So Amanda, if you are listening, hello. But with that said, can you guys just talk about all the efforts, what you guys are doing, what it means to Maker's Mark, and why it is so important to you all as a brand, and all these efforts that you're undertaking for sustainability issues?
Yeah, I'll take this one to start, Beth, and please kind of build on. We talk a lot about Maker's Mark as a wheated bourbon that's balanced without bite, and on its face value, you could really take that to me talking about the flavor profile, that it's balanced, doesn't have bitterness, and doesn't have astringency. But we also mean that as a bit of a double meaning. It's balanced without biting our people or our community. So think about B Corp. B Corp certification is companies that are verified to meet high standards of social and environmental performance. We're transparent, we're accountable, it's third-party validated. It really transforms the global economy to benefit all people, communities, and the planet. So we really do a lot of give back. So you'll have seen that with some of our work with the Lee Initiative, as we did that particular project during the height of the pandemic, and carrying on to support that community while also supporting our local community in Marion County. So we think about B Corp as how we treat our people, how we treat our communities. There's some environmental aspects to that as well. And as we've really looked at bourbon as an agricultural product, we understand that the terroir, how we treat the terroir and the varieties of corn, of barley, of wheat, and the oak that we use, bourbon's pretty simple, they all have an impact. So we're really looking at how we treat the land that we're on. That's regenerative farming. And that's a conservation and rehabilitation approach to food and farming systems. And Star Hill Farm is actually Tier 2 certified as regenerative as of 2023. So we're really excited about that, to not only talk about it, but to actually do it, and to be a model where when you come to the distillery, you can tour the farm. We have a farm tour experience. You can actually see what this is all about, what does it look like, and how you can then take that into your community.
Yeah, I think
that's.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Beth.
Oh, I was going to say another piece that I'm really excited about is our White Oak Genome Project. So the White Oak genome had never been sequenced until a couple of years ago. So through a partnership with the University of Kentucky, we actually got a sample from one of the oldest white oak trees in the state, we believe, on our property of Maker's Mark, and they sequenced the genome. And it's really to help us understand what the white oak is made of. How do we help it become disease resistant and prevent, the extinction of white oak, considering its vast importance to this industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've also planted, and Blake, I don't remember exactly how many species of white oak, but like 12 or 1,300 trees, I think we've planted on property of different species of.
Yeah, it's the largest collection of genetic diversity ever assembled for white oak. And I think that for us, long term, white oak takes 60 to 80 years to grow and to make into a usable barrel. So this is a really long term type of effort around research for us, but it enables mitigation for climate and disease threats to white oak, and helps us identify traits that will improve barrel quality, flavor, and maybe other economic value improvements.
And I think I love
Yeah.
it the most because it's not something we will ever see in our generation of what the results are, but it's being so forward thinking about our environment and our resources that we're protecting our futures.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. And I've seen that beautiful tree, and she is gorgeous. So, and is that part of a tour yet, or is
Yes.
that it is? Okay, because Amanda kind of took us around and showed us kind of everything going on, and I knew she had said it would be. I wasn't sure if it actually was, but yeah, that's something. It's definitely worth seeing how magnificent that tree is. But I do understand, I guess, that tree is actually on the downward trend, I guess, because it is so old. Is
Yes.
that right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is sad, but it's cool that you guys are doing that. And I think that speaks volumes to this new generation. We talk about cycles and we talk about, the trends and the ups and the downs, the bourbon back in the 70s and 80s because kids don't want to drink what their parents are drinking, blah, blah, all that stuff. I mean, it's true, but you guys are really looking forward. We talked a little bit about the history, and the history of Maker's Mark is great. And we've got several episodes, people can go back and listen to, but you guys are really creating a new history for Maker's Mark in what you're doing here. And I think that's just really, really incredible. All the things that you guys are doing there. And is it something like 80%, 86% or some percentage of whatever is consumed there on site comes actually from the distillery? Is that right? Or on site there? Is there a percentage of that?
I don't know that there is. I think we shoot to be about 80+% of everything from our garden is used at Star Hill Provisions in our restaurant. But our key is to source as locally as possible. So.
Yeah. Okay. And then
And that's
kind of going on.
that's a
Well,
big
I'll tell you what.
part
Let's
of,
talk
why-
about the whiskey
why we've
before I
got
ask that.
while we've got the apiary, we have a specific serve at the distillery called the Gold Rush, and it has honey as a key component of it. And so we're trying to make all the cocktails that you have that are a Gold Rush at the site. That honey is actually from Star Hill Farm. So that's why we have all the apiaries there. We have a zero landfill initiative. So we are trying to be really holistic and thoughtful on how we approach environmental issues.
Yeah, and that's great because it is. I mean, the new generation of drinkers out there, these are big concerns on their minds. So they want brands that are not just producing, great whiskey to drink, but they want brands, they want companies that they're going to feel comfortable supporting, based on what they're doing with regard to the environment and issues of sustainability. And you guys are really, I think, from a distillery perspective, it seems to me you guys are really kind of leading the charge there. You're at the forefront. Is that a fair statement?
I hope so.
I'm not sure if we're at the forefront, but no, we're doing our best, and we've got some really phenomenal leaders that help guide us on that way. Kim Harmon is our general manager, and she is amazing in all things sustainability. Lindsay is also part of the team, and she's also just a big champion. So with these two key leaders supporting us, we're able to do some really great things in the area.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey, the Maker's Mark Cask Strength, the one we're drinking. What did I say it was? 110.4. Yeah, 110.4. So what do you pick up in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
The palate for this one is, again, kind of everything we've had, just amplified. I get a nice note of like cherry cola right up front on the palate. Then there's the sweetness that comes through with like a honey or a bruleed sugar, kind of the toasted, almost burnt type rich sweetness. Then I'm picking up the baked note in the bread. To me comes through as almost like a shortbread, kind of like a buttery shortbread. And then there's like a tiramisu cream kind of finish, like a vanilla cream, nice warm finish on the end that I really, really quite enjoy.
Very nice. I don't know that I can add much to that, Matt, other than this does not drink at 110 proof. I mean, this just does not drink what in my mind, when I say 110 proof, this does not drink like what I think 110 proof bourbon would drink like. So what other things have we left out or missed there, Blake?
I think you got it pretty well on the palate. I don't have much to add to that.
Matt's like an expert level. He's awesome. Beth, how about you? What do you got?
No, I have the same things. I think my favorite, again, on this one is you nailed it when you said it doesn't drink like 110 proof. You do get a little bit more of that baking spice and a little bit more of alcohol intensity than you do with classic, but it's not harsh, it's not hot, it's not alcohol intense. It's just really well-rounded and one of my favorites. It's what I drink most days. So
yeah, I can see why. So one question what I wanted to ask you guys was when I was there and we toured the farm, we went through the actual wheat field that was there on site. So you guys are growing some wheat there. Is that part of something? Are you all using that wheat actually in what you're doing? Are there other plans for the wheat that you're growing there as well?
Yeah, we've got some future-facing innovations that will specifically leverage that. Not quite ready for the prime time yet, but something coming very soon.
Okay. All right. Well, I wasn't sure. I just wanted because it was beautiful because we were there in the spring and it was just beautiful green and the wind was blowing it. And it was just like, they talk about amber waves of grain, but I mean, this was like beautiful green waves of wheat. And it was gorgeous just driving through there. I took a bunch of pictures of it because it was so pretty. But yeah, I was wondering, I was like, you guys are growing some wheat here. I'm wondering what's going to happen with that, but we'll save that for the next round when you guys come back on. Is that fair?
We'll see you next year for that one.
Perfect.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, I'll tell you what, we are at the end of round 2. So let's take a quick break and get a word from our sponsors. And we'll be back with more with Blake Layfield and Beth Buckner from Maker's Mark in just a minute.
Three Chords line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The three-chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. And I'm going to tell you, I am super excited about this. This is probably one of the most exciting rounds that I think we've ever had on the Bourbon Life Podcast, Matt, just because this is such a big announcement. I mean, this is just so new, so cool. I'm just really excited about it. I'm really excited to jump into it. But before we do that, I'm going to thank all our sponsors. I forgot to ask you, Matt, how you doing out there, man? I'm so sorry.
Look,
I'm so excited.
It's all good. You are so excited. You forgot about asking me how I'm doing.
Forgot
and
about
that's
you, man.
Great.
I'm so sorry.
I absolutely love it. Seeing you as giddy as a schoolboy brings joy to my evening.
All right. Well, good. Well, I appreciate you overlooking my faux pas there, Matt, very much so. But I do want to thank all our sponsors, thank them for everything they do. But with that said, you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. We have back for the third round of the Bourbon Life Podcast, Beth Buckner, the Senior Manager of Innovation and Blending, and Dr. Blake Layfield, the Senior Director and Head of Innovation, Blending, and Quality at Maker's Mark. Welcome on back for our final round this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever it is you're listening to the Bourbon Life Podcast of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Cheers to round 3. It's the most exciting one.
That's what we always say. You've made it this far. You might as well not quit on us now.
That's right. Yeah. This one, I'm so excited. Guys, I am so excited about this round. Like I said, I mean, honestly, this may be the most exciting round of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
I keep a tally
ever.
of how many times you say excited.
I know. I get easily excited about things like this, but this is crazy awesome. So let's talk about round 3. Who wants to tell us what we're drinking on this round?
I guess I'll do this one because Blake, you get the story on this one. This is this year's expression of Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. So it is our first age-stated whiskey. It is a blend of 13% 11-year-old and 87% 12-year-old Maker's Mark bourbon. Aged for the first half of its life in a traditional warehouse and the last half of its life in our limestone cellar. Yeah,
very cool. We're going to talk a lot more about that, but I appreciate that explanation. And what was the proof? 115? I think 115.7.
115.7 or
we've definitely
7.85% alcohol by volume.
Yeah, thank you. And I, honestly, I was thrilled when I got this delivered here because I think I got bottle 43 of the first 100 bottles made, and I was just like, oh my gosh! I mean, honestly, could not believe that I've got this, and I didn't want to crack it, but it was so good that I had to. I debated about it, but I'm like, no, it's too good not to drink. And I didn't know if I'd be able to get another edition or another bottle of the first release here, but this is going to be an annual release. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. So the thing that struck me, initially when you look at it, of course, I've already drank the other ones, but this one, the dark color, just beautiful coloration on this one, that first stuck out to me. So Matt, I'll throw it over to you, man. What do you pick up on this one on the nose?
The nose is really, really rich. I get like a real rich, dark, like stone fruit, red wine fruit kind of aroma coming off of it at first. Then the vanilla is super prominent on this one. Just really creamy, bold vanilla flavor to it. Certainly a little bit of like that beautiful aged whiskey kind of caramel corn notes on it as well. A little bit of like an earthy aroma to it as well. But I think that it plays well and just goes to show the maturity on it. Just really, really nice. A good balance. Certainly not nosing at 115.7 proof. Just really complex, bold, and just luscious.
Yeah, when I think, Matt, of like an aged bourbon, something that's in that 12 to 15 year range, I mean, this is what I think of. It's just got all those notes that stand out. You get those bourbon notes, and these are intensified, but the stone fruit type, it's kind of like I don't know, I don't want to say like a cherry pipe tobacco, but I get like this just pipe tobacco aroma. And when I think of an older whiskey, that's something that comes to mind, that leathery kind of pipe tobacco smell, the age of the barrel coming through, Matt. I think you said some earthiness, that came through as well. I picked that up, and I will just tell you, if I could spend the rest of my life drinking whiskey that is like 12 to 17 years old, if I could afford to do that, I would do it. But unfortunately, I cannot afford to do that. So Beth, Blake, what else is out there on the nose that we're overlooking?
I mean, Blake and I write very simple tasting notes. I'm going to be honest, because it's more from a like, here's the top 3 or 4 things we get. So dark stone fruit, you nailed it on the head. There's a ton of it in this one. I almost get like a caramelized sugar. So not quite vanilla, not quite caramel, but like caramelized sugar all the way through. And then that like toasted oak, which you say this, like you can tell the maturity of the barrel in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of describe the dark stone fruit for me. I'm not sure if you've ever had a Luxarado cherry before in like a really good old fashioned or Manhattan, but that's the particular dark stone fruit that really strikes me as being in there, and that caramelized sugar and vanilla note. Again, this is a very personal experience. Like creme brulee has very much of a lot of those same types of notes, like the top shell of the creme brulee, and it reminds me a ton of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And those Luxardos are awesome. I have keep a jar in my refrigerator at all times, just because you never know when you're going to need a delicious Luxardo cherry and make an old fashioned, right? So let's talk about the process, because I mean, 1953, Bill and Margie start, Maker's Mark. You guys run consistently until around 2013. When 46, I think, came out, if I remember correctly, somewhere around that time. It's almost 60 years before there was really something different that comes out. And nothing ever really aged more. I think the standard age is right around 6 or 7 years. Is that right?
Correct. 6 to 8 years is our standard
6 to 8
range.
Okay. Yeah. So everything's in that age range. And I know for years people have been bantering, please put out something with age. So what was it? Well, just talk about the process. Everybody wants to hear. How did this come about? Who who made the decision? Who said, let's just go for it. Let's just do it. And then talk about the process and how you did it, because the process is so unique in and of itself and deserves to be understood. So go ahead and tell us about that.
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on, Mark, that for years consumers in the U.S. have been asking, if not pleading, for an older Maker's Mark. And we resisted that change because it didn't meet our founders' taste vision. I talked a bit about that earlier, that in 1953, they wanted to make a wheated bourbon when the category norm was a rye. Then people started making single barrels. And we say, well, that doesn't really make sense for us because of how we rotate our barrels. What if we let them make their perfect version of Maker's Mark with Private Select instead of doing a standard single barrel experience? This is our next kind of what if, where instead of aging in a traditional warehouse, what if we put it in the cellar? So this liquid was produced by taking fully mature Maker's Mark between 6 and 8 years that has been aged in a traditional warehouse and then moving those same barrels into the cellar for the remainder of the aging process. The cellar is at 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius for your international listeners year round. So that's interesting because traditionally the warehouses experience major temperature swings from minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the year in Kentucky and their position within the warehouse. So the cellar changes how maturation occurs. The impact of time is different here as the influence of the cask is slowed down, but oxidation rates stay the same. This cellar environment is much more similar to what you might see in Scotland, where their annual temperature is around 48 degrees Fahrenheit year round. So this aging concept results in a product that is deep, dark, rich, and complex, and importantly, and in the Maker's Mark style, without bitterness. Because we talked a lot, Mark, about we do have an experience where you can taste traditionally aged Maker's Mark at that same age range, 12 years, and some people do find that they really like it. And our argument is that people are a bit conditioned as to what an older age bourbon is supposed to taste like. And it's supposed to have a ton of tan and a ton of oak. And we agree that the nose on an older bourbon in a traditional warehouse is absolutely amazing. But when you taste it, it's quite drying, it's quite tannic, it's quite bitter. And that's not necessarily what we believe quality is.
I think the only thing I'd add to that just a little bit is it's not that we didn't believe in older whiskeys. It's just that we didn't believe in an older whiskey for us because it didn't meet taste vision. And so it wasn't until the Limestone Cellar came online in December of 2016 that we had this environment that we could go, oh, wait, what if we could do this a little bit differently? We now have a perfect environment to do it in. So it's not like we had never thought about it before. We've been thinking about it, but we couldn't figure out a way to do it where it stayed true to a taste vision and true to the ethos of the brand, where it was still, you know, round and creamy and bitter free, but and easily approachable, and something we'd be proud to put out to share with everybody.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, Blake, I'm glad you brought that up. And we talked about that a little bit in the break because I was able to sample both. And I did enjoy them. They're both different, but I think the way I just described it was like, it's like you had this object and it had these rough edges on it, and you've taken some nice sandpaper and really sanded it down and made it into this much more beautiful, opulent expression. And I really think that's what the Cellar Aged was. It took something which was delicious. I mean, that your 12-year-old aged in the warehouse was delicious. I'm not going to lie, but this Cellar Aged really rounded off, sanded off those harsher edges, those tannins, the things that were, that some whiskey drinkers may not enjoy as much and that aren't within those guardrails. You know, what you talk about, Maker's Mark, your taste vision, and you were able to, eradicate those, get those out by cellar aging it, and you created this beautiful expression. So, yeah, very super impressive. I mean, it's really great. So, was the cellar created with that in mind, or I didn't think it was? Okay, no. So you're shaking your head.
The cellar was created so we could age Maker's 46 all year round.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. So you need the cold environment for the 46 and the staves, that process. So we could only make it October to March. which didn't give us much time to make a lot of 46. So,
right. Well, that was what I was thinking. So it was kind of a nice surprise, I guess. Then it's like, oh, hey, while we're doing that, we could probably, because it's like a dunnage or whatever, this in Scotland where you have those smaller warehouses that maintain that constant temperature, which is what. And I was in there, and it was great because it was a hot summer day. I got to walk in, and it was like 55 degrees. It's like, I'm a big guy, and this feels nice in here. I was just going to stay the rest of the day in there. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool, and I appreciate it. So let's talk about the bottle, because obviously the red wax traditionally, it stays. That is Maker's Mark, but this is completely different, right? I mean, this is kind of, so can you talk a little bit about that decision? Because the bottle is beautiful itself, the way you can't really tell it like a hammered glass, but the whole decision and the process. Can you all talk a little bit about that? What went into making that?
Yeah. So it was really, how do you elevate the classic bottle to show it's a premium expression? And so we kind of took Maker's Mark Classic and made it taller and a little skinnier, kind of just stretched it up. So when you set the bottle side by side, they're a family. If we call it a family of bottles. And sure. So that Cellar Aged bottle, we wanted it to be premium. We wanted it to feel really good in your hand. And I'll be honest, it's one of the best bottles for pouring whiskey. Not that I want you to drink it all, but you should, because it's really easy to pour out of. And then we just thought that texture just gave it that little bit of extra, specialness. And my favorite thing is we kept the label really small so the whiskey really stands out. The whiskey is the strength of the bottle.
Yeah, that's what, it's funny because when we were there and we were in the lab earlier, a month or so ago, and I was walking through and I actually saw a bottle of this setting out, and I was like, oh, they haven't finished labeling it yet. So when I got the bottle, I was like, oh, wow, okay, it is. That's it. I mean, that is extremely unique. I mean, the label wraps, 2/3 or 3/4 of the bottle on the sides and in the front. And it says 2023 release down here in gold. But just really just a beautiful bottle. And it looks like it's kind of like a hammered, almost like a hammered copper or something, the way the glass it has a hammered look to it. I guess you can kind of see the dimples reflecting there a little bit in the light, but just a beautiful bottle to go along with a beautiful expression. So, but this will be an annual release, correct?
Yes, and we expect the blend to change every year. So it'll be a blend between 11 and 14-year-old whiskey. So it's always that age to taste, not to time. So that where it's 11 and 12-year-old this year, it might be 11 and 13-year-old next year, or whatever we have, and that meets taste vision. So.
Okay. So will each expression, will you then try to match year after year?
I was just going to say our taste vision is always deep, dark, rich, and complex. That's what we want, and without bitterness, for our taste vision for Cellar Aged. So how we choose to express that will change with the blends, and that's why it was important for us to call out that this is the 2023 release, because every release year will be different with how we choose to express that flavor vision for this particular part of the portfolio.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry about that. I think we got a little bit of a delay on your end there, Blake. So when I was talking, I kind of cut you off, and sorry about that. Didn't mean to do that. So Matt, let's jump back and talk a little bit about the palate and the finish. Can you jump in on that? What do you think?
Sure thing. The palate definitely has the richness that we're all talking about. Nice, dark stone fruits and those red wine fruits, more of like the plum or fig really start to come through on the palate. I get sort of almost like a root beer type flavor as well. Then the baking spices, very prominent with this, the cinnamon, clove, almost like a little bit of cardamom or ginger. Those brighter, warm baking spices come in, and I pick up the bread theme has kind of been across the board for these three: the classic, the strength, and also the Cellar Aged. For me, this is more like a cornbread. Has kind of that cornbread, like fresh cracked cornmeal type flavor on it as well. Then a nice long oaky cherry type finish, just really, really lovely. This is in no way does it drink 115.7 proof. It's very balanced, very, very refined, but also very bold and a little bit wild.
Yeah, that's a great way. Great. I mean, I can't add anything to that, Matt. I mean, there's nothing I can add that's gonna add any value to what you just said. So, Beth, Blake, what do you guys? I know you said you like to keep them simple. So what else do you have to add to that?
I think you hit almost all of them. I think the only thing that we have on the texture is the texture to me is really velvety. So it's one of those mouthfeels I don't get often in whiskey, but this one, it really just kind of sits. And it's velvety all the way through. And I think my favorite thing about this one, and the longer you let it kind of sit and open up and drink it, there's so much complexity. You have to think about it quite a bit because it continually evolves and just changes. My favorite is one of our diplomats who are our brand ambassadors, our advocacy team in North Carolina texted me the other night and she goes, "What did you put in this whiskey? It just keeps getting better the more I drink it." And I was like, "I don't know, but I'm really glad it worked."
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add to it is just on the finish. What I tend to find, because when I have older aged bourbons, is that you do get a really long and strong finish with those, but they're generally more astringent and bitter, and they kind of almost compel you to have another sip because you kind of want that highlight of flavor back on your tongue versus kind of that longer, stronger, over wood and tannic finish. This one is really long, but it's very soft and approachable, and it's something that's actually really pleasant. So as it's probably sitting in your mouth right now, it's long, it's complex, but it's really unique in how it finishes, and that viscosity and weight on your tongue is quite interesting within the category, and I think a really flavorful experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I'm just thankful you guys put it out.
Absolutely.
I mean, honestly, it's a treat. I mean, it really is, and I was so excited, like I said, to get to come down and taste it, before it actually was released, and it's amazing. I'm looking forward to tracking this one down year after year because this is one that's definitely worth finding and getting. And I follow things on Facebook, and people have gone pretty nuts about this release. So you guys should be pretty proud of that fact because it's really driven some interest, quite a bit of interest from drinkers and fans. So yeah, there's not much else you can really say about it. But we're almost at the end of the segment. But before we do that, can we talk a little bit about the future of Maker's Mark? Can you talk a little bit about where you're headed, what that looks like for the brand?
Yeah, so we're going to continue to push the boundaries of what flavor can be, both in our existing portfolio and in our new innovations. We're always continuing to push to improve the quality of our products, to create new and exciting innovations and renovations, while also pushing boundaries for research and for education around bourbon and experiences at the distillery. So we've got a lot of work going around farm tours, around culinary tours, and around bourbon. So if you ever have the chance to come to Loretto and come to the distillery, whether you're someone who's really excited about bourbon, someone who's really into art, someone who's really into culinary, food and cocktails, or someone who's into nature and hiking, there's going to be a lot of experiences that either already exist or that will exist in the very near future. So please come see us down in Loretto sometime soon.
Yeah, that sounds great. Beth, anything you want to add on that end?
I think Blake nailed it. I think it's going to be a continuation of making the best classic Maker's Mark we can make every single day. And then, like we said, understanding flavor in every aspect and kind of pushing the boundaries of what flavor is and how we can get the best flavor possible. So,
yeah. Now, I will tell you, I'm holding out for the stargazing experience down there in that cool little area down, across the creek and things. So close to where the mushrooms grow. Yeah. I'm holding out.
We'll tell Amanda. I'm sure she'll put you as the first one on the list.
Awesome. I appreciate that very much. So before we get out of here tonight, I want to ask you, each of you, what has been the best part of your journey? Not necessarily just at Makers, but I mean, overall in the whiskey industry, what's been the best part of the journey for you both so far?
I think for me, I've always wanted a job where I get to ask why and how and then figure it out. And I am lucky enough to have a job that I get to ask why and how across the board on everything. And so like Cellar Aged, for instance, we had an idea of what was going to happen. Would it work? Would it not? And we got to see that it worked. And now we got to give everybody a really great product that we're proud of and finally able to talk about after 6 years of keeping it a secret. Probably the most exciting thing. So for me, that's been the most rewarding. It's just being able to ask why and how and actually figure it out and then meet really great people along the way.
Very cool.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's got to be all about the people.
Blake, how about you?
What brand I've worked on or worked for, the people are always really engaged. They're excited. They want to put out the best possible product that they can, and especially at Maker's Mark, what I find is quite different about them is we are still led by that founding family member. And while we get a lot of pressure to make things cheap or to make them fast, that's not necessarily our ethos at Maker's Mark. Rob keeps us focused. He keeps his people focused and his team extremely engaged on making the highest quality Maker's Mark. Cost, not necessarily the focus area. Speed, not necessarily the focus area. It's all about making it right the first time, focused on that founder's flavor vision. And, when you go to work, finding an ethos and a vision that you can respect and that you can stand behind, I think is really powerful. And that's what you find in the Maker's Mark brand.
And working with people you really enjoy too, right, Blake?
Well, some of them.
Oh, wow. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We really appreciate you guys joining us tonight. I really enjoyed this. So before we wrap it up, where can people find out more information about what's available, what they can expect if they come down there to Loretto? Can they find your website, or where's a good place to get information?
Yeah, everything is available on makersmark.com. It'll give you every tour we have available. And then all the exciting tasting notes and fun little videos about every single product that we have.
Awesome.
We also have sites on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So if you have any of those social handles, please look us up.
Awesome. Final thoughts tonight before we wrap it up, send it home. Blake?
Well, thanks for having us, and sorry that I've got a bit of a delay. I think my internet here in the basement may not be the strongest, so apologies for that. But thank you so much for having us on, Mark and Matt. It's been such a pleasure having the first podcast experience be with you two.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. And hey, you know what? At least we can see you, and at least we can hear you, even if we do have a little bit of a delay. So we're A-okay. And I know the editor of the podcast, he may be able to fix a few things. So
even better.
Yeah. So Beth, anything you want to add before we wrap it up here?
No, I think thank you so much for having us. It's been a blast and really fun. And thank you for enjoying our products. We love making them and put a lot of passion and thought and stress behind them. So it's great to see that you all love them as much as we do.
That's awesome. Matt, final thoughts before we send it home tonight, man.
Beth and Blake, thank you all so much for walking us through what you all have been doing and what you all have coming up and what's been happening with Maker's Mark. It's been a really great episode. I know Mark has been really excited to get it going and get you all on here and get a chance to chat with you. And cost be damned, time be damned. Thank you both for sticking within the guardrails and producing the quality product that we've all come to know and love. We're really excited to see everything moving forward and keep tasting what you all have been working on.
Matt, that's great, man. And like you said, we appreciate you all joining us very much. Appreciate the products as well. Obviously, just great stuff. And when I think of bourbon, when I think Kentucky bourbon, Maker's Mark is at the top of the list. I mean, it's just, to me, it is quintessential bourbon. I mean, Matt, as a native Kentuckian, like I am from Eastern Kentucky, when I think bourbon, I do. I think Maker's Mark. That to me is what Kentucky bourbon is. So we appreciate the hard work and effort you guys put into it to put out these great products. Thrilled with the Cellar Aged. Just absolutely love it. Thank you all for doing that. That's a game changer. Super excited to have it, and have actually just really enjoyed having you guys for your first podcast. And this has been a lot of fun. You guys killed it. You did great. So thanks for spending a little bit of time with us tonight, and we really appreciate that. For all of our listeners, like Matt always says, we appreciate you all listening, whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is you tune in and get your Bourbon Life fix. We appreciate you joining us. We do appreciate all of our sponsors, everything they do for us. We couldn't do the show without your help. So thank you all very much. If you guys would like to join us on Facebook, you can do that at the Bourbon Life. We also have the private Facebook group as the Bourbon Lifers. We got a lot of fun stuff going on in there. So feel free to reach out and join us there. Also on Instagram at the Bourbon Life. And you can email us if you have any show suggestions or just any general questions. We're always happy to reach out and help you with that. You can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And we appreciate you tuning in. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up and send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.